Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Recovering lawyer, New York Times bestselling author, speaker, philanthropist, professor, diplomat, dreamer, and doer. These are just a few of the words that can be used to describe today's guest, Bob Goff. After practicing law for 25 years, then becoming the Honorary Counsel to Uganda, Bob gave up his law firm to pursue writing and speaking full-time. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Love Does, and he's back with a new book that I can't wait to share with you all today called Everybody Always. If today's conversation with Bob feels more like a journey, that's probably what he would want. So join us as we talk about loving without limits, living without fear, and dreaming big. As Bob says so well, we'll be known for our opinions, but remembered for our love. Here's my conversation with Bob Goff. So Bob Goff, it is such an honor to have you on. You know, Everybody Always is your new book, and it's just out, and I'd certainly encourage everybody to go grab it and pick it up. It's an incredible book. But tell me this, first, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I had written a book about 5 years ago called Love Does. And the premise of the book is pretty simple, that love doesn't just think about things, it actually does stuff. And so we have people in our faith communities, our business communities, and that are thinking about a lot of things and making a lot of plans, but sometimes you defer actually taking action by making a bunch of plans. Not that plans are bad, but they're just not all they're cracked up to be sometimes. And so Love Does was this kind of angle on saying, what if you build the plane while you're flying it? Like, just start moving in that direction. It wouldn't be for everybody, but it might be helpful for some. And then I owed these guys, you know how that works with writing books yourself, that the publishers then want another book, and we signed up to give it to them, but I was actually 4 years late. I just didn't have anything to say. And then I noticed everybody was really on edge. Have you noticed that, Molly? Everybody just
in the world?
Super uptight. The people that build our bridges and live under the bridges and govern us and serve us, and everybody was just on edge. So I thought about this discussion Jesus had with his friends about loving your enemies. And I really don't have a bunch of enemies. There are people that are sore at me. I'm a pretty nice guy. But there's a lot of people I just don't understand. And I realize that what I've been doing is spending my whole life avoiding the people that Jesus spent his whole life engaging. And so what I thought I would do is just say, how do you love the people who creep you out? And it isn't just like loving some people sometimes, which is what I'm really good at. But how could you actually start loving everybody always? And what I figured is that you'd actually have to turn into love yourself. And somebody asked me, how do you become love? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I'm still turning. But one of the crazy things is that the people who creep us out actually make sometimes the best teachers. Haven't you found that somebody who's been the most difficult in a relationship actually are the ones that taught you the most about who you are? And that's why there's this thing called dating before marriage.
Right.
You can actually spend time with people and see what works and what doesn't work. And so anyway, that was the premise of the book. And so what we did with Love Does, we just gave all the money away. And we've been going around the world opening schools. So we've got one in Uganda and one in Mogadishu, Somalia. That's a pretty creepy place.
Yeah,
because there's no government. There's
El
Shabaab is everywhere. We have a school in Iraq. And I just got back a couple of days ago from Afghanistan, where we opened up our next school in the north. And I'll tell you, man, that is a crazy place.
How is that?
Well, it's just filled with people that have the same hopes and dreams that you and I do. They're just armed.
Yeah.
So they're in the middle of this 17-year armed conflict. And so actually it stretched back way further than that. But I mean, we've spent $1 trillion over there, and it's not a political thing. I'm just I know what you get with $1 trillion. You just get a bunch of people with a lot of guns. But what you get with a nickel pencil, you get a girl reading,
Yeah, that's
a
awesome.
girl learning how to write. And I'm like, I'm going with the nickel pencil. I don't have $1 trillion. I don't want to shoot
Amen.
anybody. But, and I'm sure there's great reasons for everything. But yeah, I think what each of us gets to decide is what's our piece? How do you get some skin in the game? So that's what we've been working on. So everybody always is just kind of reaching out, just saying, not the people that are easy to love, because you'd be like low hanging fruit, Molly. You're like really nice, and you make the people around you feel like a boss. That's why you have a podcast. But what about the people that are actually kind of creepy, that
Mm-hmm.
have a barb to them?
Yep.
And so that's what I'm learning.
Well, and I heard you talk about recently, right? Sometimes those people, a lot of people get on airplanes and go all over the place, which you've done, which is huge and important. But you also talk about how important it is to sort of, do that across the street from you, or,
Oh,
at the
yeah.
grocery store checking out, right? Just sprinkle love.
Totally. Yeah. The whole idea that sometimes we get this misconception that it's really noble to go across an ocean. And I guess I just think it's less noble. I think the idea is to go across the street, across the office, and think how many millions of people I went right over the top of on the way to help out in Afghanistan.
For
When
sure.
there could be like a neighbor. There's this neighbor that for years and years took out our garbage every Monday morning. And he's like this, pretty famous guy.
Uh-huh.
But he would just take our garbage out and put them away. You know why? Because he just loves his neighbors.
That's pretty cool.
There was no fanfare. Like that's, I think, that idea of being secretly incredible. You don't have to write a book every time you do something swell or make a big
Right.
deal
Or
about it.
post it.
Yeah, totally. Just go do something awesome.
Well, and I love what you talk about, right? People don't grow where they're planted, they grow where they're loved. And, my husband and I have 3 daughters, and I just think about keeping love at the forefront of everything, and that will help other people grow. Tell me a little bit. I love this line. I love that it's much more than a line, it's how you live. But tell me a little bit about how you learned this message and how you apply it in your own life.
Of loving people. Like I'm still working on it. I'm like the student, not the professor on that. But what I'm doing is when people say something, and it doesn't happen very often on social media, but every once in a while, somebody will say something kind of angsty. And sometimes I just figure they're just as insecure as me. They're just acting it out in a different way.
Sure.
So what we end up doing is masking our insecurities with acquisitions or relationships, or you buy a puppy or whatever it is. And they're not all bad and they're not all good, but if you could recognize that they're all just manifestations that we actually need the same things: love and purpose and connection, a couple meaningful, authentic relationships. I would say the person in Afghanistan that's creating all the problems needs those things as much as we do. And to say that, like, sometimes people do some really awkward things because they're in pursuit of these things, but they're just not pulling it off well. So they want a meaningful relationship, but they're actually very difficult on the people around them. And then they scratch their heads why their relationships are really shallow. It's because you're really difficult with the people around you. When they try to go a little deeper, you make them feel safe. But all of us are looking for purpose. And so I'm a pretty tightly wound person. I'm like super energetic. And so one of the things that I can confuse is a lot of activity for a lot of purpose.
Right.
When sometimes just a lot of activity is just a lot of activity. And
Right.
so that would be a great thing to reflect. If you could do just a little audit for your listener to say, okay, you can make the list longer or shorter, but mine would be love, purpose, acceptance, connection, a couple meaningful relationships. And so then ask yourself, like, do I have a couple meaningful relationships in my life? Like people that actually know me, the people that'll ask the third question.
Yeah.
The first question is like, what's your name?
Right.
The second question is what you do. But the third question might just be, who are you?
I love that. That's cool. Right. What's
So
the
what
third
if you
question?
just start with the third question, skip the other two because nobody cares? You'll figure out that stuff along the way.
Well, the best is people that you talk to them and they're like, "How you doing?" And they're go, "Great, great." And if you just keep going, right, they're maybe not great.
Yeah, maybe ask
so you can dig in.
Yeah, do a little audit. It hasn't happened yet, but when people ask me like, "How you doing?" I go through this little audit in my mind. I go like, "How's sweet Maria doing? How are our kids, Lindsay, Richard, Adam doing?" And if I don't know how they're doing, I'll give them a call, and they'll say, somebody asked me how I'm doing, and I can't tell them how I'm doing until I know how you're doing. And wouldn't it be awesome if I called my daughter and she said, "Dad, let me call my husband and find out how he's doing. So I can tell you how I'm doing, so you can tell them how you're doing. So it would just be slowing up the cadence a little bit. And you can't, doesn't mean you need to go a mile deep with everybody, but it doesn't mean you need to be spread a mile wide.
When you think about people that are difficult, we do these negotiation workshops and we talk about this, right? We talk about the difference between different and difficult. And maybe they're just different, that it's maybe they're not as difficult as we think. They're just a little bit different. When you start loving people that are difficult or different, tell me about some of the ways you've done that in your life and what you found.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most difficult people I know is me. I'm really kind of a quirky guy, and I'm gone all the time. I'll tell my wife I'm flying to Afghanistan, and she's just really kind about that because if you have a life that takes you many places, then that leaves a lot of people pulling up a lot of slack. And so sometimes what we want to do is talk about like the difficult other people. And so part of it, I think, really comes down to if you can kind of not just love other people, but actually love yourself. And I'm not saying like write all these affirmations on the window. You're a swell guy, looking good. That's fine. If that blows your hair back, go for it. But to actually love these little picadillos, be so self-aware that you can figure out how you're wired. And then it'll make you a little bit more empathetic to understand some other people and how they're wired. I'll give you an example. I've got a friend, and one of their picadillos is this. If they smell spearmint gum, they freak out. Literally. If they just smell a juicy fruit's fine.
Freak out in a good way or a bad way?
Bad way. They just can't take it. They'll lose it.
Okay.
If they just a whiff of spearmint gum. Now, I'm not really keen on it, but it doesn't bug me. One thing that does, and I don't know what disorder this is, but it's perhaps several, is that if I'm in a room, I can literally be in a room with 15,000 people, and in the front row, if somebody's jiggling their leg, like it'll be the only thing I see. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
That's just bizarre. I don't know what that is, but those with degrees in psychology do. So what I always do, I don't have notes when I'm talking. I just bring some images with me. And so what I always do, though, is I always have a music stand or a little table or something that I bring up.
Sure.
Everybody thinks there's notes on it. The only reason it's up there is to put it between me and whatever's distracting me.
Interesting.
And and so what I've done, and one thing that might be helpful to people, is to figure out what is it that you find difficult about people, and what if you're self-aware enough to know this is the problem I've got, not the problem they've got. The person jiggling their foot's just happy or nervous or whatever they are, but I'm the guy with the hang up, and to figure out what are you going to put between you and whatever's distracting you. Wouldn't that be just a really simple way to do it? What's distracting you, and put some in between it. Isn't that crazy?
That's interesting. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting. So, and how does that work for you, right? So do you look at the podium when you want to look at them, or how do you actually deploy that?
Oh yeah, literally. So row one over at 2:00 is somebody that's like jiggling their leg around.
Yep.
So what I'll do is I'll put the music stand, just step 6 inches to the left. I put the music stand between me and them. I don't see it anymore. And so there's something actually beautiful. And so people, if faith is a big deal, you can put Jesus in between you and whatever's distracting you.
I see what you're saying. Got it.
Business is distracting you. Put your family in between you and whatever's distracting you. So that would be great to say, what's distracting me? I don't mean leg jigglers and spearmint gum. I would say, what's distracting you from living your life? And then what are you going to put in between you and whatever's distracting you? Sometimes you have these big prayers. I remember when I was a young guy and I just wanted Marie to like me half as much as I liked her. And I'm pounding my fist on the steering wheel in law school. I'm like, I like her enough for both of us. So just half as much as me would work. And then we got married. She gave in. We got married. We bought our first house. And then the big prayer was like, if I could just own my house, then, I would be so set. And then when we got to the point where we could own this house, I bought a house that cost twice as much. And I retread the same prayer, like, God, if I could just own my house. We could almost own that one. I bought a house that cost twice as much. And I could see that I'm a goalpost mover. What was distracting me
Mm-hmm.
was this idea, and it had the feel of just retreading the same prayer I just went on in my home. And I feel like all of heaven leaned over the rails and said, "Stop buying bigger houses."
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something beautiful you could do, avoid the big intervention, and you could just have a little mini intervention and say, what's distracting you? If it's acquiring bigger houses, put something in between you and what's distracting you.
Mm. It's interesting because I always talk about how if we can shift defensiveness to curiosity when we're inside of difficult conversations, that it can be a pretty powerful shift. When we're having maybe a tough conversation in business, how do we shift that? So what I'm almost hearing you say, which is really cool because it's a great visual. I'm really visual. It sounds like you are too. You put curiosity between you and sort of this feeling of defensiveness, which I hope oftentimes drives potentially connection, which is, as you said earlier, what we all want, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can be curious without donning the stethoscope to think you're an MD somehow. They can just crack the code about why this person is wonderfully complex in the way that they're dealing with you. To just say, wow, I bet that would be exhausting
Right.
to go through life that way. I had
Mm.
when I was growing up, we had this door jamb in our house, and we would stand up against it as straight as we could. And our parents would put a pencil on our top of our head and make a line. Did your folks do that for
Oh,
you?
yeah. To see how tall you were?
Yeah, totally.
For
Keep
sure.
track of it. Well, I had a sister who actually wasn't as tall as me, but when we stood back from the door jamb, she was always like an inch taller. And I was always scratching my head. I'm like, what in the world? And I didn't figure it out until many years later. But she had been up on her tiptoes. And so sometimes when people are difficult, what I'm just realizing is that they're just up on their tiptoes. They're trying to be an inch more right than you, an inch cooler, or an inch more flashy, an inch more better title, like whatever it is. And I think that just one of the things that's changing in me is just realizing, I just kind of look down at their feet. I just think it's actually would be really exhausting to be up on your tiptoes like that. Um, and so if you just can get a little bit more compassionate, and to your point about being curious, you'd say, I wonder where that's coming from. So instead of making it about you all the time and how you feel about whatever they just said, just be curious about, like, I wonder where that's coming from. Where they need to feel like they need to kind of be dominating either the conversation or dominating, having a strong passion. It isn't always a bad place. You can just say, wow, that person is really passionate about pasta. I have never met anybody more jazzed up about the health benefits of pasta, but it's just not your thing,
Yep.
right? It's not a
Yep.
bad
Yep.
thing. It's just a bunch of flour pasted together, but it just doesn't happen to be your thing. And so just chill out a little bit. Let people know that I think people that are turning into love that I've experienced are people that are just a little bit more relaxed.
Mm-hmm. Which you seem and sound like, and of course, with all the things I've read, I mean, there's probably people listening. They're going, "Wow, man, this guy is so positive, right?" What are 2 to 3 things that you would tell somebody to be intentional about being positive in their life? Right? You appear to be wired pretty positive, right?
Yeah, positive can come across as synthetic sometimes. You just go like, well, actually, you know what? That's just a little bit too cheery of an outlook for things because there's difficulties in lives. And get this, like I tried death penalty cases against witch doctors. So I've got gears. And I'm not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a yippee skippy guy. Like I just have a strong like justice component. But just because you deal with difficult things, you don't have to walk around with a frown on your face. And there's something beautiful. So if I set out today and say, I'm going to try to be positive, I think it would be an absolute fail. I just like, that's not going to work at all. But if you said, I'm going to have just a handful of conversations today, do you know what? A handful of sand has 400,000 grains in it. Isn't that awesome?
That's amazing.
That talk about being curious.
Sure.
Wikipedia wouldn't lie. So
Wow.
400,000 grains. If you live 92 years and have 12 conversations, that's what 400,000 looks like. So you say, today I'm going to be positive. It's just not going to work. You won't get out the front door. You'll step on the cat's tail. You'll do something will go wonky. But if you say, I want to have 12 actual conversations where I start with the third question. Now that is something you can actually, it's tangible, it's a plan, and you'll find what you're looking for. Like I wanted a 1971 Volkswagen bus. I hadn't seen one for 20 years. As soon as I decided I wanted a 71 Volkswagen bus, every third car is a 1971 Volkswagen bus. So in the same way, this idea of just decide what you want. Your goal, if you say goal, be more positive, I drill down on that. Say, how about we replace that with, I can have 12 meaningful conversations where I start with the third question. Then you'll get to know the mailman. You'll look for the opportunity. Somebody say, how are you doing today? You say like, wow, this is actually an opportunity. Say, I'm not going to tell you what I normally say, which is fine, and move on. But I'm really curious about this. And then again, to your point about curiosity, did you know a banana is a berry and a strawberry isn't? Isn't that crazy?
No idea.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah. So ask people, like learn things along the side. Learn about why Johnny Appleseed got his name. Like just learn things. Well, what did Pinocchio need to become a little boy, a real boy? Like figure out these things that are fascinating to you, and you'll actually be a more interested person, and you'll become a more interesting person. And you're not doing it like a parlor trick. You're doing it because you want to be engaged, because you want to have the third question. And if you know a banana's a berry, I'll tell you, got a conversation. That's one of your 12.
Sure. Well, and through that curiosity and through those questions, we know that human beings love human connection, right? So they go to bed that night after sort of leading a day with curiosity and asking questions and learning and starting with the third question. And through your work and your life, you'd say, hey, man, when you go to bed tonight, after doing that, you're going to feel more positive. It's in a really real way.
Yes, totally. Learn a card trick. Literally, you can just go online. Somebody will teach you a card trick, and then go home and show everybody you can about this card trick. And there's something beautiful, but don't just stop with the card trick. Have the conversation while you're doing that. This idea, there's a card trick where it'd be difficult to describe, but essentially you're just laying out the cards in a way that after making a couple move, the card moves to the 11th card. There's 21 cards. It moves to the 11th card. And so by shuffling it 3 different ways, it'll make its way to the 11th card. And everybody else thinks that's magical. You actually are trying to move this thing to the 11th card. And if you do this and this and this, it will become the 11th card. And when you go like to them, people go, how did you do that? And the reason is that you knew that if I did these 3 things, that card would move to the 11th card. And it looks like everybody else, to everyone else, like something magical just happened, when actually it was a little bit formulaic. If you just did this and this and this. And I'm just saying, don't make your conversations feel formulaic, but just decide I'm going to have 12 of them, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper than, hi, how are you? And then you wonder later, why do you have all these opportunities that have come your way? Well, I don't know. I was talking to people about the third thing, and a year ago, I'm talking to somebody about Afghanistan, and they say, I know this guy in Afghanistan. And then I talked to the guy in Afghanistan, and then fast forward a little bit, people will say, like, how did that happen? What I did is I just moved it to the 11th card.
Hey, you mentioned your days as a lawyer, as an attorney, and in the courtroom and the gears and all that. People ask me that a lot about sort of why I shifted in my own career. What made you leave your career, as a lawyer to write and to speak and inspire like you do today?
Yeah, well, a couple of things were going on, as happens in everyone's life. It's a confluence of streams. There was some things that we were up to in different places, and a publisher said, would you write a book? And I said, I don't know, will you build a school? Because I'll trade you one book for one school. And they said, well, how big's the school? I said, well, we're going to have hundreds of child soldiers in northern Uganda and probably 40 or 50 teachers. And they said, big school. And I said, big book, right?
Nice.
So
yep.
I made them pay me in advance because we didn't know if it'd be any good. And then they sold like over 1 million of these things. And we just decided that we were just going to take the next step, whatever that was. If I had a bake sale and made a bunch of cupcakes to sell, people would die because I'm not good at that. But I actually know how to spell words. And I'm like, I actually am pretty good at that. So use what you got to get what you want. Just figure out what you got and then use that. So if you're good at carpentry, I'd say use that. If you're good at numbers, use that. You whatever it is. So I'm actually
So you followed that.
yeah, and it's the difference between what are you able to do and what are you made to do. So I'm able to be a lawyer. I win arguments for a living, but I'm like not made to argue with people. I just stopped arguing with people a long time ago.
Yes.
This is not that doesn't blow my
It
hair
doesn't
back.
get you going. Yeah.
Yeah, but for somebody else, if that lights them up, I've got some friends that are political commentators. That's actually lights them up. They love it. And I'm like, hey, Mazel Tov, whatever it is. But I would say don't do it just because you're able to, because I'm like able to be a lawyer. And if you want to make a bunch of money, that's a great way to do it. But if you want to make a bunch of difference, then there's other things for each of us. And I really am just a big subscriber to this idea that we're new creations. Like just each day, like who's the new you? Who's that guy? Not just what I'm able to do or the piece of paper that's in a file cabinet somewhere that says I'm a lawyer, but say like, so who's new Bob? Not all the previous versions, but new Bob. And new Bob just decided, you know what, I'm 59 now, and I don't know how many days I have, but a couple, and I'm just going to continue to start building schools. And so I think we're on year 17 of that. So I don't know what the math is, but so I was a younger guy. So for everybody listening, think about like new you. Who is that? What are your capabilities? Not what's going to work, but what's going to last? Because pet rocks, those worked for a while until everybody realized they're spending $30 on a rock. So it didn't last. So what's going to last in people's lives? And loving people always will last.
Loving people will always last. You know, one of the things I love that you talk about is becoming, right? So that you talk about the person you're becoming, and you just sort of talked about that. And the word becoming is threaded through a lot of your books and your content. You know, how do we stay true to our core values, right? What matters most to us in our lives and the things that we truly believe in, and sort of mirroring that with our ability to continue to evolve each and every day on who we are becoming, to your point, sort of that quarter turn that you talk about.
Yeah, a lot of it is just realizing you're on this really long path. And some of us spend a lot of time, an inordinate amount of time, trying to figure out whether we're ahead or behind the guy in front of us. Instead of just realizing, hey, we're all on this path and we're moving in a direction. And so this idea, sometimes in faith communities, somebody will say, like, are you a Christian? I say, well, actually, I'm becoming one. I'm like actually on this path towards. Are you a lawyer? I'm like actually becoming a lawyer. If you start doing it, it isn't just wordsmithing it. It's just realizing that you're continuing to evolve into the more accurate version. And you're going to leave aside a couple of things. You'll need to let a couple of things go along the way. And then you'll gather a couple of things along the way. And the best thing to gather are a couple of good friends that'll remind you of not just who you used to be, but who you're becoming. So like that guy, you're that guy. Brad Quick was a guy 35 years ago that told me, Bob, it really honors me that you come on time. And you know, it was a simple thing for Brad. He's just an affirming guy. But I mean, it's so many years later, and I don't arrive places late. And you know why? Because a guy told me 35 years ago, I was that guy. I was the guy that got there on time. So I'm not saying blow a bunch of sunshine at people and say things you don't mean. But when you do see something in someone else, when you do see something in yourself, you say like, wow, I'm actually becoming that man, that woman.
Well, and I think it's amazing. You put your cell phone in the back of your book, right? So tell me this. I mean, you've probably got a lot of people that reach out to you and pull on you at times, right? Although I know you don't look at it that way. How do you align being available? I mean, you have your cell phone in your book. That's pretty incredible. To being present with the people in your life that matter the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something we each try to navigate in our own way. Some people talk about finding balance, and that's a fine term. I think of a tightrope walker trying to not fall off the tightrope. But I spent so much time trying to find balance in my 30s that I felt like I tipped over. So what I try to do now is like find time. So finding time, it's kind of like it's the first thing God made. It's the last thing sometimes we make for each other. And so this idea of, and it isn't for everybody. I got a couple friends that we have in common that that'd be the last thing in the world they'd want. They would actually die. They would be dead in a week if they were available to people. But I would say to people that are curious, when you do reach out to people, know why you're reaching out to them. So every once in a while, get a phone call. I'm not critical of that. I just understand they're just on the path. Like they're just walking, they just haven't thought through why did they call. So they called up to say, "Oh, hi, it's Bob here. Hey, what can I do for you?" And they go, "Oh, I really don't know. I'm just calling because, well, I just thought I'd call." And it's like, "So how's your day?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a terrific day. But what if you do this? Here's my email and just collect your thoughts. And if there's something I can do for you, just let me know." So instead of being harsh and say, "What do you mean? You call me and you don't know why you called me?" That would just be really harsh. I would say leave your phone number out of all books if you're going to do that. But to just say, for people that have actually thought through what they want to talk about, and you can say we can do it. It's like speed dating, like just in a minute or two. Let's just get after it. So people that are listening, find the people that inspire you in the business community or in politics or whatever it is that is your jam, and then know why you're calling them. And the worst call to make to anybody who's an author, including you, would be to have you call up and say, "Hey, listen, I haven't read your book yet, but tell me what it's about." I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
I always say, don't ask somebody a question you can find out on your own, right?
Yeah, that's cute. That's really cute. So I don't think a bad thing. I just go like, "Oh wow, yeah, this is they got like training wheels on." So don't just be kind to them. Don't break their spirit to say, "Oh man, I wrote so many words and they're all spelled differently. I can barely even remember what it's about." But if you end up getting one for a nickel at a used bookstore someday, give me a call when you're done if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to talk to you. That's just such a kinder way to land 30 seconds in their life instead of saying, like, "You're disorganized, I'm too busy." That's a lame question. And I think that just that moment of kindness, you'll carry that into your relationships, and you'll wonder why you have a bunch of wonderful friends. It's because you just stop being a jerk.
Yeah, for sure. And what's so cool is you don't just talk about dreaming big and going for it. You do it. I mean, you do it, right? You go and you build schools, and the foundation that you started is beyond belief awesome. What do you tell people that want to dream big, but maybe they don't know what that dream is, right? How to uncover that and then have the courage to go for it.
Yeah, I think for most people, it's like looking for an opportunity. So you find your dream, you have something that pings you, like something lights you up, whether it's playing the oboe or playing in the NBA, whatever it is that your jam. Like there's something that just shimmers a little bit. So
Sure.
figure out what that is. And then don't try to take all the steps, but definitely take the next one. And to say, if there's something, I want to meet the Dalai Lama. And so the next thing to do is get the Dalai Lama's address. He's living in exile in India. But don't just stop there in Wikipedia. Actually put the letter in the mail and say, "So would it be okay if we met?" So the Dalai Lama said that he wasn't going to reincarnate himself because China said, "We're picking the next Dalai Lama." And this one was a little bit out of shape about that. So I wrote him a letter and I said, well, if you're not coming back, could we meet now? And he said, yes. So literally, he didn't know me from Adam. So they don't do it like ding dong ditch and then have them say yes and then you don't go, but just go. Buy a plane ticket, a bus ticket. You can call the White House if you like the guy there, or wait till the next person. And the number's 202-456-1414. What I ask people all the time when they call me up and they say, "Well, it's easy for you because you have all these opportunities." And I go like, "Actually, remember at the beginning of the conversation, I told you what the phone number for the White House was? What is it?" And inevitably they'll say, "I don't know." I'm like, that's the difference between me and you. If somebody told me the phone number for the front desk at the White House, I would have written it down. So it's not to bring shame upon them, but I would say to answer your question, look for the opportunities, and when they come by, jump on them.
Yeah,
like somebody tells you
sure.
the phone number, write it down. You get Kim Jong-un when he was pointing nukes at us.
Right.
I wrote him a letter.
Yeah.
Said, like, I'll trade you, 5 bicycles for one nuke. Like ground delivery, not air.
Right.
So just get some skin in the game. Find a way to engage the culture and the issues around you that ping you the most, and then just start. Just do something.
That's
if
what
you're
you're saying. Yeah.
You want to make a bunch of money, go to the U.S. Treasury in D.C. That's where they make all of it. You don't get to keep any of it, but that's actually get in around people that have a lot of money. If that's your big ambition, then don't shame yourself to say like, well, actually, that's like just not a worthwhile goal and all that. You'll figure that out. You'll decide if that's a worthwhile goal or not. But I would figure that stuff out on the move.
Yeah. Build the plane when you're flying it. Yeah.
Totally. I do my best planning, like whatever I can write on the back of a barf bag in the like seat pocket in front of me on the airplane
Sure.
on the way there. Like that's where I'm like, come on, we're going. I'm not thinking about it.
I laugh because, we all have offices and desks and all that kind of stuff, or a lot of people do. And, I think of my best stuff when I'm at yoga or on a walk with our dog or, but it's not usually at our desks, right? So we got to get up and get out and go do, like you're saying, which is.
Yeah, bingo.
That's cool.
Yeah, like I teach a class at Pepperdine Law School, which still cracks me up.
It's very cool.
But you have to have office hours if you're a prof there, but they don't say where. So I have mine on Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland, Wednesdays, 10 to 2. So I'm the only guy at Disneyland grading papers. But there's actually something kind of winsome about that. So you could take what you're doing right now for the people who are listening, and then how could you give that just a little twist so it becomes a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more purposeful. I don't go there to go on the rides. I can't afford the food. I just have an annual pass, and I just go and I just hang out there and say hi to people. So cool. There's something about availability that is just beautiful, and it's something that everybody can afford if they want to.
Well, in chapter 6 of Everybody Always, you talk about failure and how, and I think this is a really cool thought, how it's not usually this sort of initial fall that kills us, it's the second hit. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah, that idea, catching people on the bounce.
For sure. Really cool.
Yeah, it's like when we all mess up, and it's bound to happen, I want to be like rushing towards people when they mess up. What if you just take the news for a week and find somebody who's messed up and then reach out to them? You're not going to hear back from them because they're engulfed in their big mess up right now, but it'll actually mean a lot to them. And it'll actually start changing you because you'll feel like you've got some skin in that game, not just empathetic, or find some people that you want to engage. But engage people without an agenda. This whole idea when love has an agenda, I like it isn't love anymore. And we can all see through that right away. We just like love people just because they're valuable. God loves them. So you're going to try to engage them. So find a way to do that. So don't just be a bystander or a consumer of the news. If that's your thing, then reach out to some of the people. So there was somebody that was on the news. One of the letters that'll go out today will be one of the people that was on the news. I just want to drop them a note, say, man, that I bet that really stung. I'm just thinking about you. That's it.
That's good
you don't
stuff.
need to write them a book. That actually won't be that helpful. If somebody sends me a 2,000-word email, I just write back to them in a super nice way. I just say like, wow, I get maybe 300 emails a day, and I just can't answer the long ones. But if you could boil this down into 4 or 5 sentences, just let me know. So it's not like making them feel lame because they were kind enough to write you a really long email. Make them feel like a boss. And at the same time, you get to monitor the rules that work for you. And that, for some people, that's a cathartic kind of thing. That's actually a beautiful expression. And for me, just reading through all that, I don't want to just give them an answer as if I read it. Just give me 5 cents. I can give you 2 ideas about that.
So, Bob, you've been so generous with your time. We end with this rapid fire question. So I'm going to fire off a bunch of questions to you, and you just tell me what comes up. Does that sound good?
Yeah, this sounds like an ink blot test.
There we go. Well, yeah, we got this. Yeah, and you're so, you're so clear. This will be quick. So, one word to describe you.
Energetic.
Last book you read.
Oh, Peter Pan.
That was the last book you read?
Yeah. Love that stuff.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. What's your favorite book?
A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. Don Miller.
Okay. Yeah, and Don Miller and I are, we talked about that. We're buds too. He's such a good man.
Isn't he?
Oh, he's the best. He's the best. A person you would most like to meet?
Let's see. It would be somebody that's creating, probably Putin.
Okay, interesting. What brings you the greatest joy?
So finding people like realize who they are.
Okay. What advice would you give your younger self, the younger Bob, that guy from 25 years ago?
Oh, yeah, it'll work.
It'll work? Oh, I love that. That's awesome. So the show is called Game Changers. So one last question. Who's a game changer that inspires you and why?
I think it's the people that have risked a great deal. Again, just coming back from Afghanistan, there's a husband and his wife there that are trying to lead the country in a new and beautiful way. They're actually in leadership. And there's many perils in the country. And so when I see courageous people that are looking out towards the horizon and they see, for a country, they see past all the weapons and they see the people. And then the people that are willing to like take action on that, not just that they write beautiful prose about, on the far side of the ocean is a ship with sails. It's not that it's just fancy prose. They're actually willing to do big and small things to get there.
So, Bob, how do people sort of find out more about you, listen to more of your stuff, read your books? Where's all that live?
Oh, I'm easy to find. Yeah, I'm just out there.
Bob Goff, Twitter, Facebook, and if you go to the last page of your book, there's your cell phone.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy guy to get hold of.
Bob, thank you for taking time and for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. You're such a gift. No. You're a gift to so many people.
It's fun just thinking out loud together. So for each of you that are listening, don't just agree with us. Now, if you're like me, just write stuff down. So, so here's 3 things I'm actually going to do. That would feel like a win for me. That was worth the time. If you said, I'm going to go home and hug the person I love the most. I'm going to go get a puppy. I'm going to do whatever it is, but then just decide, here's 3 things I'm actually going to do today. Now we got a ball game.
There we go.
If you just go like, great podcast.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
That's like a 0. But so here are 3 things I'm going to do. And if it's cure cancer, that's terrific. But I would just start with something else, like go to medical school.
But do it, right? I mean, what I'm hearing you saying, totally. Go do it, right? Go do it. Well,
yeah, sometimes you get this idea that hoping is helping, and actually hoping is just hoping. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to help people, like move these beautiful ambitions and hopes that you have, like 1 square forward.
Awesome, Bob. You be safe.
Okay, terrific. Thanks a million.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.